Pests beware, your fields have heroes. The Pests and Predators podcast is brought to you by Field Heroes and is powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Learn how beneficial insects fight pests and protect your crops. Visit fieldheroes.ca today.
Joining us right now to talk about a new program, a new launch of an initiative, significant initiative. It is Lisa Bishop-Spencer, who's the Executive Director with the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity. Lisa, how are we doing?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Okay, so give us the goods here. What is this program that's being launched?
Well, for some time now, we've been working on trying to address indifference in the food system, right? So our research at CCFI showed that we were having a fairly significant drop in confidence in the Canadian food system. And for some time now, we've been trying to mobilize a public awareness initiative aimed at really sort of just building that public trust. And then January happened, and we started to notice a whole lot of pro-Canadian sentiment happening. We thought this is a really good moment for us to leverage that and build something that covers the entire food system. So we've created something called Canada's Food System. It's an initiative, it's a public awareness initiative to elevate Canada's food system and agriculture to its rightful place as a core societal value compared to healthcare and education among Canadians, and really start to get people to engage with it and compel them to just help us sustain it and promote it and evolve it. So we're looking at sort of reversing the indifference, enhancing public trust, but really leveraging that pro-Canadian pride sentiment to ensure that the food system always stays prominent in the mind of consumers and policymakers and the general public.
And who are we promoting to? Is this a domestic campaign to try to raise the awareness of what's happening in agriculture and the food system to Canadians, or is there export initiatives here that are part of this? What is this? Who's the target?
We, at this time, we're promoting among Canadians, right? We're really leveraging that message that people need to understand their food system a little bit better and really start to engage with it a little bit more. So it's really mostly Canadians at this point, although the campaign will continue to evolve and grow.
Yeah. Where's the gap? Like what are we trying to fill here where we could say, yep, move the needle, success? Right.
So right now, for instance, fewer than half of Canadians hold a positive view of Canada's food system. So that's a 7-point drop from the year before. We're hoping to provide a lift to that and really help that pessimism that had hit an all-time high last year because of just a lack of confidence that the food system was going in the right direction. So we're trying to leverage those numbers really to build that kind of trust. What we've seen, our challenges have been that there's been a lack of sort of a clear, unified message from across the sector that says, hey, Canadians, the food system is important and you need to pay attention. And there are different levels of understanding, and I would argue in many cases, no level of understanding of the different parts of the value chain, right? There are people who think of farmers and they think of retail and they're not sure about the partners in between. They don't know the role that they play. And then, of course, there's just different levels of understanding of the food system. They don't understand the economic contribution. When they think manufacturing, people kind of default to cars when they think about manufacturing in the news, when our food and beverage sector is the largest manufacturer in Canada. So it's just that lack of awareness that we're trying to address.
Are there regional differences in how people view Canada's food system? Are there, demographic, like ages, where things separate? Could talk about those.
Sure. So I can give you the best example that I can think of off the top of my head, and that has to do with just sort of online conversations. So at any given time, there are 38.5 million Canadian conversations happening online about any topic. What we do know is only 1.5 million are about the food system. So that's a very small percentage. What we do know about that 1.5 million is that 80% trust the food system. So that tells us that we have to get more people talking about it, because that gives us an opportunity to step in, address misinformation, and really start to bring people the understanding of the value of the food system. Of that 1.5 million, the vast majority are Gen X and boomers. And what we've learned through the research that we've been doing leading up to this campaign is that Gen X and boomers have far more influence over our primary shopper, who is the millennial mom, than anything we're putting out. So you think that they're the people who are the most in touch with the food system. So they're aware of things like recalls or information that's out there, and they're influencing their children. Don't buy those eggs, dear, there was a recall, right? So they're having so much influence that if we can teach them about the food system, then we're influencing the influencers. So that's sort of an initial target, and then we're broadening out to that broader population as well.
And in regional?
Yep, regional differences there are too. So there are different, depending on sort of, as regional would be more urban versus rural divide. So we know already that there's an urban and rural divide, and that since 1921, the urban population has outpaced the rural populations. And that's led to just a different level of understanding. People thinking in some urban centers that their food comes from the grocery store and not understanding where it comes from and the work that goes into it.
Yeah, with such a small amount of the population actually working in the sector, those numbers are working against the industry as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, we need to think about things like jobs as well, right? That the Canadian Agriculture Human Resources Council did a study, and they asked Canadians, what do you think of when you think of a career in agriculture? And people said, well, that's farmer. So they went back out. They said, well, what else is there? And they said, that's a trick question. It's farmer. And so they don't understand that you can be a lawyer and work in agriculture. You can be an engineer and work in agriculture. There are so many career opportunities in the sector that if we can start promoting the people behind the system, then people can start to see themselves in the system.
Okay, so what does success look like? If I have you back on here and you're like, yep, successful campaign, initiative was well worth the time, the energy, the money, what does that success factor look like?
Success looks like moving the needle on public trust, right? So we've seen it in the forestry sector. They've done a concentrated campaign, and they've successfully leveraged the campaign in a few years to be able to get almost 80% of the Canadian population looking favorably upon the forestry sector. In a generation, even among the generation that thinks that if Amazon rainforest destruction is bad, then all forestry must be bad. But they've converted, they've changed that opinion. If we can start to change and move the needle and ensure that people have a better level of understanding of how it works, but also understand the importance of what we do, right? The high level of money that we bring into the GDP, the contributions that we make on an economic perspective, but more importantly on innovation. So we've also done some research when it comes to innovation and how Canadians view it. And Canadians love innovation when it comes to healthcare, for instance. They think that's terrific. But the minute we start putting the words innovation and food together, consumers get nervous. Canadians get nervous. They're like, what are you doing to my food, right? So we need to position innovation in terms of outcomes. What does it mean for them? Because of what we do, you have more choice at the grocery store. Because of the innovation and the strides we make, we can help feed 400 million people around the world. When we start communicating innovation in terms of outcomes, people are more likely to understand and to buy into and support the system. So we need really to be focused on innovation. And that's one area that the entire sector can get behind. There are a lot of differences, competitive, not competitive, between each part of our sector, but we can all really get behind the fact that we are innovating and we need to innovate in order to succeed.
Do you have any idea what percent of the population is like immovable? Like, so you gave the 80%. So there's in forestry, maybe that's a 20% of the population. Just no matter what happens, no matter what is said, no matter how safe it is or just, environmentally friendly, they're just not into forestry. We should never cut down any tree. We should just give up paper products altogether.
Right.
Well, when it applies to food, what does that look like?
If I'm looking at sort of we have our yes people, the people who are very supportive, and we have our no people, right? And then we've got that mushy middle, as researchers refer to it as. That where we've seen the shift is in that mushy middle, and they've been going over to the no side a little bit. So we need to be able to ensure that absolutely there are going to be people who are immovable. I don't know what those numbers are, but certainly it's that mushy middle that we have to convert into supporters.
Great stuff. We've been talking to Lisa Bishop Spencer, Executive Director with the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity. Lisa, if somebody wants to find out more about this campaign, Canada's Food System, where do they find it?
They can log on to canadasfoodsystem.ca. And on that site, you'll see there is a pledge. And this is just one of the calls to action that we're doing with consumers. It's with Canadians, it's an ability for them to sign a pledge and say something nice to the food system. We're going to be kind of collecting and curating all those messages, putting them on the website, sort of on a rotating banner, and communicating it back to the food system to let them know that they've got the support of the people. And then in addition to that, the campaign kind of runs the first 100 days looks like a large-scale social media campaign, and then we're going to grow it into what we call a cornerstone campaign, a longer-term campaign just aimed at telling the stories and really involving the people in ways that let them become invested in what we do.
Great stuff. Lisa, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.